Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for being here. Welcome to the New America Foundation. This is part of the efforts of the Middle East Task Force and the American Strategies Program to introduce a lot of voices that aren't commonly heard on the Middle East and to discuss new and innovative, out-of-the-box thinking on how to end this conflict in the Middle East and move forward. Normally, the people that we have here are policy wonks. They're politicians, or they are statespeople, or they are people who are involved in trying to answer the policy questions. And rarely do we actually get people who save people's lives, people who are actually involved in keeping people alive, people who are, in many cases, involved in even personal acts of heroism to come and speak. They usually don't show up in D.C. because they're out in the field actually trying to keep people alive. Today, we actually are very blessed to have somebody who's actually in that position. Mr. John Ging is here from UNRWA, and he's traveled from the Gaza Strip to be with us and to talk today in an event that is co-hosted by two groups that are strong supporters of UNRWA. Now, the way we're going to do this is John's going to join me up here in a few minutes, and we're going to have a conversation for about an hour, and then we'll take some questions from the audience and have a continued conversation with the audience. But before we do that, I'm going to introduce the two co-hosts of this event. The United Nations Association of the National Capital Area, represented by John Salzberg, and the American Friends of UNRWA, represented by Tom New. I'll start with American Friends of UNRWA. It's a nonprofit, non-governmental organization that's set up to assist the work of the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine refugees in the Near East. The organization's objective is to promote a life of dignity and development for Palestine's refugee population by informing the American public about UNRWA's work and generating financial support for its programs. That's actually a critical and vital role that's necessary, because when UNRWA doesn't get funded, people go without. I mean, it's a very direct line, causal relationship. UNRWA is funded, UNRWA keeps people alive. UNRWA is not funded, people get dropped out of the safety net. And Tom will come up here now. I'll ask Tom to come up and do a brief introduction. Tom actually is going to be heading to Jerusalem very shortly to become the new director of the Carter Center in Jerusalem. And so will undoubtedly be, in his own right, speaking about this issue in the very near future. So we look forward to actually having him come back in that capacity and letting us know what he's seen. But here, please have a seat.
Hello. Okay, actually I'll save this seat for John Ging rather than sit comfortably in it because I know you've come to hear from UNRWA's director in Gaza and UNRWA's voice from Gaza. But I just want to take this moment to mention that there's another event coming up very soon, as you can see from the flyers that we've left on the table and that I can pass to you, on October 26th in New York at the Cathedral of St. John the Divine. Vanessa Redgrave will be giving a one-person performance of The Year of Magical Thinking. So if any of you are looking for a really fantastic evening in New York on October the 26th, please let us know or take one of these flyers. We'd be happy to have you there. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Now, the United Nations Association of the National Capital Area is a nonprofit organization that builds support for the United Nations through local education and advocacy. It was established in 1952. It's one of the oldest and largest divisions of the United Nations Association of the USA, and it's a member of the World Federation of United Nations Associations. It has over 3,000 members, volunteers, and supporters just in the Washington area, and it plays a vital role in ensuring that the United Nations has the support that it needs in often what is a very hostile political domestic environment. So John is the co-chair of the Middle East Committee. And John, if you'd say a few words, please.
Thank you, Amjad. First of all, I'd like to recognize that my co-chair, Rabbi David Schneider, is here in the audience. The United Nations Association for the National Capital Area actually had a session on Gaza about a year or a year and a half ago, and this was on the humanitarian situation. We were pleased to have Andrew Whitley from UNRWA speak on the situation in Gaza at that time. due to the state of siege imposed by Israel. Now, this session today is the first in a series that the Friends of UNRWA and UNANCA will be having on the observance of UNRWA's 60th anniversary, and we will be looking at UNRWA's work across the board, not just in Gaza, but in the other countries where there are refugees, looking at the social, economic, educational, and medical health work that UNRWA is performing. So, and again, my appreciation to the New America Foundation for hosting this event.
Thank you, John. And if I could ask John Ging to join us. Now, John, I'm going to introduce you, but before I introduce you, I'm going to say we actually were hosted, so this is in a way a return visit, because we were hosted by John and by Karen Abu Zaid in Gaza in May. Daniel Levy and I traveled there with 3 congresspersons, and Daniel actually, unfortunately, was unable to get into the Gaza Strip, but we were treated wonderfully, and one of the people who works on the ground there, who survived through Operation Cast Lead and did remarkable things to save people's lives during that time, including the lives of the staff of the United Nations, which also came under assault, was Stephanie Fox, who's here with us and probably doesn't get a lot of attention and fanfare, but I think all of us should at least give her a round of applause. Stephanie's American, and so it's great when American citizens are actually involved on the side of saving Palestinian lives. John Ging is an Irish national and a former officer in the Irish Army who's served as head of UNRWA in the Gaza Strip since 2006. He's a former captain in the Irish Army. He was seconded by the Irish government as a regional director with the aid agency GOAL in 1994, following the Rwandan genocide. He heads the United Nations 10,000 employee operation in the Gaza Strip and has spoken frequently while running the operations about the needs of the civilian population as well as the demands of the United Nations staff that has been also suffering, and I think that's also one of the lesser known stories. He oversees UNRWA's $400 million budget. Is it $400 million budget in Gaza, and is responsible for 750,000, providing services to 750,000 refugees, which is about half the population of the Gaza Strip. And as they told us when we were there, and which is obviously visible to anybody who walks the streets of Gaza, approximately half the population of the Gaza Strip is under the age of 15. So John is already well known in his own right, so I'm not going to spend too much time with the introduction and get right to the heart of this. This is the 60th anniversary this year of UNRWA's operations. Now, I remember several years ago, maybe 10, 15 years ago, I was at an event that Fatah, which is the Palestinian party in control of the West Bank Area A part, and they were hosting some event, and they said they were celebrating the anniversary of the revolution, and said, and we look forward to next year and celebrating the 18th anniversary of the revolution and the 19th anniversary of the revolution. But there was already an expectation that the revolution was going to become an ongoing, institutionalized affair, not necessarily with an end date. UNRWA is supposed to end. It was never intended to be providing services to refugees for 60 years. Can you give us a broad overview, first of all, of what UNRWA's mandate is right now and what services it actually provides?
Yeah, and it's the very same as it has historically been, to provide education, primary education to the refugee children, health care to, again, the refugee population of 4.5 million refugees in the region. 1 million, just to correct your figure there, of them are in Gaza. Then relief and social services, to pay particular attention to the most vulnerable in the refugee population, be it the women, be it the disabled, be it the youth. These are individuals have always been of particular focus for us in terms of their human development. And then we, in addition to that human development mandate that has been there for 60 years, we also have been tasked with, of course, a large humanitarian challenge, which is particularly acute in the occupied Palestinian territory in the West Bank and in the Gaza Strip. And there we have very large programs of food aid assistance, cash assistance, job creation, cash for work, psychosocial programs to deal with the effects of the environment and the violence on the kids and so on and so forth. So they're the two big pillars of our operation: human development and humanitarian assistance. And then the third pillar is infrastructure. So we have a responsibility to maintain and develop the camps in terms of schools, health centres, water, sanitation, and so on. So again, it's a broad range, and as you have highlighted, it's a very large and expensive operation. We've been doing this for 60 years, pending political solution to the conflict and to the refugee issue in particular. We don't celebrate our existence after 60 years. It's more a commemoration. But what we do, of course, take a lot of pride in is the contribution that we have made, in particular on the education side. UNRWA, from the very get-go, made sure that there was equality of educational opportunity for boys and girls, which was quite a precedent-setting scenario at that time. And today, Palestinian society reflects that we have both elements of society, well-educated, and in fact the highest academic achievement is among the girls and continues to be. So that again is something that we feel very proud of, because again, when it comes to solutions going forward, it's always the women who are instinctively better equipped to contribute positively to solutions, while we now have a very well-educated female population on the refugee side.
Now, are your operations run autonomously from the governments in the region? For example, if Fatah in the West Bank or Hamas in the Gaza Strip objected to the way you were teaching, do they have any ability to impact that, or Lebanon or Jordan? Or are you provided as part of your UN mandate?
Well, of course, we are working in an operational context, in an operational setting, but when it comes to decision-making, the decision-making is autonomous. We account to the General Assembly of the United Nations. So the final word in terms of what we do, should I...
Make sure our phones are turned off. I just heard somebody's phone. Yes, please turn off your phones if you haven't.
So, the final word in terms of what we do and how we do it lies, and always has done, with UNRWA. We have, of course, an independence of the political structures and also the institutional structures of the host authorities where we operate. But we do harmonise, for example, on education. We utilise the curriculum of the host authority, so the Palestinian refugees in Lebanon follow the Lebanese curriculum, education curriculum, and so too in Syria, the Syrian curriculum, Jordan, the Jordanian curriculum, and in the occupied Palestinian territory, we follow the Palestinian Authority curriculum. But again, it's very much an autonomous operation when it comes to the operational decisions. We make the decisions independent of those authorities.
And in the case of the West Bank and the Gaza Strip, the Palestinian Authority curriculum, grade by grade, has been developed with the assistance of the United Nations to replace the Jordanian and the Egyptian curriculums.
Right, with the assistance of UNESCO in particular as the UN agency with competence in that.
Right. Now, Gaza, when we think about Gaza, it's easy to think about it as a political disaster. It's easy to think about it as a humanitarian disaster. But it's not a natural disaster. There wasn't a typhoon or a tsunami that hit the Gaza Strip and impoverished everyone. It's the result of a political conflict. A lot of people have insisted that there be a political resolution to the conflict. Ever since the siege was placed on the Gaza Strip by Israel in June 2007, there were restrictions before that, but the full siege, I guess, in June 2007, and then especially after Israel's Operation Cast Lead, President Obama has stated repeatedly that the Gaza Strip needs to be opened to humanitarian supplies and to reconstruction aid. Secretary of State Clinton has said it on numerous occasions. Salam Fayyad's government, when we met with the new government, the latest cabinet, they insisted that, and Bassem Khouri, the Minister of Economy and Trade, insisted that Gaza had to be opened up, and that even from Fatah's perspective of competing with Hamas, the best way to compete was to flood the Gaza Strip with humanitarian supplies and with reconstruction aid. What's the situation? So that's been going on now for about 8 months. So we've been hearing from the president here in the United States for about 8 months that the siege in Gaza has to be lifted. We know that Senator Kerry, when he visited, tried to intervene in order to get pasta delivered at the time when he visited the Gaza Strip. Where are we today? What's the situation in the Gaza Strip today vis-a-vis the siege?
Well, thank you very much to all the political interventions and statements. But this is a matter of law. It's a matter of international law. It's a matter of upholding basic human rights for civilians that are caught up in a conflict zone. And we're failing on that, and have been for far too long. So the siege on Gaza is illegal. It contravenes international law, and that's what we all need to remain focused very much on. The consequence of that illegality is twofold. It obviously destroys the living environment of ordinary people beyond their control. So we start off with the destruction of the economy. There's no economy in Gaza anymore because there's no commercial trade. 100,000 people had the dignity of work 2 years ago. When the blockade was put in place, all those industries collapsed. So now they have moved from going to work every day to going to queue for food. The infrastructure in terms of water, sanitation, and the health infrastructure is also in a state of disrepair and various states of collapse. In fact, if we look at the sewerage system, they're pumping out 60 million cubic litres of untreated sewerage into the Mediterranean every day because the infrastructure is actually incapable of dealing with the demands that are placed on it, because there's been no development of the infrastructure. There's been no repair of the infrastructure. You have 1.5 million people in a tiny congested little area. Major problems with water, the deterioration in the quality of water. The aquifer is being destroyed, is being contaminated. These are ecological issues. They are long term in their consequence. And then you, of course, move on to the rest of the infrastructure in Gaza, be it the schools infrastructure. We have a situation where we don't have enough school buildings. So what it means is you have a truncated education, whereby one set of kids, 1,000 kids, go into the school building in the morning from 7 o'clock until 12, and they are out then. In the afternoon, another set of 1,000 children come in for their education. What does that mean? It means, as I say, a truncated education, no extracurricular activities in a place where you absolutely need all of that, and so on. Every piece of infrastructure in the Gaza Strip is under unbelievable strain, and much of it is not meeting the basic standards that are required. And then, you can then look at the situation for those whose homes were destroyed during the last round of conflict. 50,000 homes either damaged or destroyed. No recovery or reconstruction. Not one bag of cement has been allowed into Gaza to rebuild those homes, and all that of course entails in terms of human misery and suffering. The imprisonment of the population extends to students. who struggle to get out of Gaza to take up education abroad. This is a massive problem for the kids who achieve high academic results, win scholarships, and then face the obstacle of being trapped, because there's very great difficulty in getting out, even for innocent students, to come to the United States or Europe or wherever to actually further their education. But you know, all of that is physically obvious. What is not physically obvious is, of course, the devastating impact on the mentality and mindset of the population. So as you can just imagine, if you're trapped there, your life is being destroyed. The prospects of a future don't exist in terms of a positive outlook on the horizon. You hear all of these statements being made about empathy, understanding, concern, commitment to change the circumstance, but it just continues to get worse and worse every day. Well, that is having a devastating impact on the mindsets of the population, because frustration and despair is very much in reality for so many people. And what we at UNRWA are particularly concerned about is the vulnerables, i.e. the kids. These are being shaped by this environment, because kids anywhere are more susceptible to the influences of their environment. And again, that for us is what we are very concerned about, and where we have to redouble our efforts to counter those influences, which are very negative. I mean, kids everywhere have bundles of positive potential. Every parent, I think, worries about what's going to happen to their kids as they go out into the outside world in terms of the influences of their friends and their environment and so on and so forth. Well, it's the very same for a parent in Gaza, except it's worse. Because when they go outside the door, I mean, the physical environment, the physical experience, the psychological experience that they're having is all very negative. And, of course, that's having a very real impact on the mentality, the mindsets, and the orientation of those kids. And as you did highlight in your introduction, half of the population of Gaza, 750,000, are children under the age of 18. And very shortly, they're going to be the next generation of leaders, of mothers and fathers. The good news is that the mothers and fathers of today share with us our universal values. Our outlook, which is a civilized outlook, they want nothing more for themselves and their families other than a dignified existence. They want to live in peace and coexist with their Israeli neighbour. There's so many opinion polls on that. I mean, it's beyond doubt. But what they're worried about, as ourselves, is what's the generation coming up going to look like? What's going to be their mindset and mentality and attitude? And how devastating this whole environment is to them, and of course how urgent it is that we counter that. That's why it's very important that we live up to our international legal responsibility to actually lift the siege on Gaza, not to politicize these issues, but rather to uphold international law, find operational solutions, effective operational solutions to the real security challenges. There are real security challenges in the Gaza Strip and emanating from the Gaza Strip. They have to be addressed, and they have to be addressed within the framework of international law. And when we do that, then we will actually be on a positive course, because at the moment, because of our failure to find those effective operational solutions lawfully, legally, by collectively punishing an entire population, we are actually destroying a society. And we're going to have to live with the product of that into the future. And again, we know that, and we need to deal with it now.
Well, you mentioned the illegality of it, and Israel argues that it has overriding security concerns, and I'll get to that in a little bit. But I wanted to ask what the response, because people have also noted, Israelis have noted that Gaza has two borders, or three really. It has the border with Israel, it has the border with Egypt, and it has the border to the Mediterranean. Who bears responsibility for opening up Gaza? Who bears responsibility for lifting the siege? Obviously, the Israelis have a responsibility. What about Egypt? Does Egypt have any legal responsibility under these conditions to open up the border with Egypt? And does the international community bear any legal responsibility to try to open it up, even if Israel determines for whatever reason that it wants to keep it closed off, to open it up from the sea?
Sure. we have actually got an international agreement which sets out very clearly the responsibilities of the Palestinians, the Israelis, and the Egyptians, as well as, of course, the international community to uphold and ensure that agreement comes into effect. That agreement was brokered by the United States in November 2005. It's called an Agreement on Access and Movement, and it sets out very clearly the responsibilities, and it also sets out very clearly the numbers, the throughput of persons and trucks and so on and so forth. It also sets out very clearly the rationale for having such an agreement on movement and access, which is that it is an essential prerequisite foundation for the development of the stability and security that is needed for advancing the whole process towards peace. So the agreement is there, and the parties to the agreement, of course, in terms of the functional operating of the crossing points, are the Palestinians, the Israelis, and the Egyptians, and they all have set out very clearly in that agreement their undertakings to ensure that these crossing points will operate, and they have also set out, as I say, details on the actual operations themselves. But it's not happening. It hasn't happened, and it has, as I say, been overtaken by other events and arguments. But that's where the law is. The law is there, and the civilian population of Gaza are entitled to that agreement being implemented. It's an internationally brokered agreement, and it's for their protection and also for their necessary development. I mean, that's why it was put into place.
Well, let me ask you a difficult question then, and I understand that. Well, I hope you can answer it. I
Sure.
don't know if you can. Obviously, the United States helped broker that agreement. The United States has said that the siege has to be lifted. On a daily basis, what are American diplomats doing with UNRWA to actually change the situation on the ground? Are you meeting with American diplomats? Are they involved in monitoring what's happening and what's not happening? Are they making arguments? We've heard about Senator Mitchell's trips to the region about settlements, and we've heard each trip, you know, he goes, he makes the pitch for the settlements, the Israelis say no, and he returns. We haven't heard anything about Gaza. We haven't heard of American diplomats. We've heard of American congressmen and senators and congresspeople and senators visiting the Gaza Strip, but not American diplomats. What's going on there? I mean,
well, again, just because it's not in the public domain doesn't mean that it's not happening, and I'm grateful for that question, because there is a huge amount of work going on a daily basis to gain greater access for humanitarian supplies, and again, not just the U.S. diplomats, but all diplomatic missions in the area are seized of that issue. The issue is, number one and first and foremost, is access, be it for humanitarian supplies, medical supplies, access for people, patients to get in and out, and so on and so forth. That's where everybody is working at the moment. But the product of the collective effort is not what it should be in terms of success, because we don't have the access that we need to have an economy. We don't have the access that we need to restore the people whose homes were destroyed in the earlier part of this year to a dignified existence, even if we have pledges, phenomenally generous pledges of money to rebuild the Gaza Strip. That again was a very significant and positive development after the war, that there was such an outpouring, not just of empathy and fine words, but of financial commitment to reconstruct the Gaza Strip, and yet we don't have the access to get the supplies in. So you know, everybody is working very hard on it, but it's not reached the success that the people are entitled to.
You said not one bag of concrete has been let in yet. So with all of the talks, with all of the diplomatic efforts of our government, we haven't yet been able to convince the Israelis to allow one sack of concrete in, and winter's coming in. How about glass? Have we...
Same. No reconstruction supplies. No supplies for construction.
And what is the practical implications of winter setting in Gaza without any reconstruction? Have we even already missed the winter? If we start letting in reconstruction equipment now, how long does it take to actually begin to try to minimally redress?
Well, again, it's easy to understand. It depends on the scale of the destruction. So, you know, if your windows were blown out as soon as the glass arrives, it'll be a day and you're sorted. But if your home has been completely destroyed, it will take months, maybe even a year, to have it rebuilt. But the most important thing now is the psychological impact, as much as the physical circumstance. People are despairing. They are a very stoic people. They have great resilience. I mean, it's a phenomenal thing to witness firsthand. But more and more they're despairing, because even if it was going to take a year to rebuild my house, if I know that it's coming, that will carry you through. Of course, there will be a lot of human misery and suffering in the meantime, and that again is quite obvious as we head into the cold months of the winter. But they're going to have that now without the psychological comfort that, well, this is my last winter in these circumstances. We're going to have it rebuilt in the spring or whatever, because there is no prospect at the moment that any construction materials are going to come in at any stage, because that's the policy. It's a blanket no.
All right, let me try to play devil's advocate, and let me pretend I'm the Israeli government. Now, if I'm inside Israel, yes, I'm arguing, if I'm Dov Weisglass, I'm arguing that we're not going to starve Gazans, but we're going to put them on a diet. We need to punish them in order to let them realize that they shouldn't have picked Hamas. Okay, that argument may work in an Israeli context where international law isn't a concern or isn't being respected. I can't make that argument outside of Israel, of course, because almost no one else would accept that particular rationale. So the argument I use when I'm in the United States, the argument I use in Congress, to the U.S. Congress, is we'd be happy to let these supplies in, but we need to make sure that they don't go to Hamas. We need to make sure that they're not used to rebuild bunkers and to fortify Hamas military positions. We can't actually allow them to rearm. And if we allow reconstruction material in, we can't be certain that it won't be used by Hamas to prepare for the next round of fighting. How do you respond to that?
Well, what I say is, you know, let's look at the situation honestly. Let's now take down the politicization of information, because if we are going to break this cycle, which is taking us in the wrong direction, in terms of in every respect, in terms of you know, the circumstances that people are having to endure, in terms of the prospects for stability and peace, and so on, then we have to actually start talking honestly about the challenges. And there are, as I've said earlier, there are very real security challenges from the perspective of the State of Israel, not least from the citizens who live in the range of these mortars that have been fired for years and years. And again, that has to be effectively addressed. Now, when we talk about the elections, as sometimes comes up, that as you mentioned there's a script that people have to be taught a lesson for how they voted. Let's be honest with the people. First and foremost, half of the occupants of the Gaza Strip are children. Didn't vote for anybody. Okay, and they're the ones who are most vulnerable in this environment that has been created. Equally, you know, if we're going to take retaliatory action against somebody for voting in a certain way, we should do them the courtesy of giving them advance notice. You know, you see, we really have to get, as I say, we have to get back to an honest scenario here, and when it comes to the challenges at the crossing points, and the question of accountability for what is coming in, I'm accounting at the moment for thousands of tons of aid every day. Okay, bags of flour, lentils, rice, sugar, and so on and so forth. I can do the very same for the bags of cement. Not because only the State of Israel wants comfort to know that the cement is not being used for unlawful purposes, but those who pay for the cement, the donors, they want to know that we spent their money properly. So in actual fact, we have always had to provide to all of our donors very detailed accountability for everything that they fund to us, whether it's on construction, whether it's in healthcare, whether it's in education, or whatever. So the mechanisms are there. They're in place. Nobody has challenged those mechanisms. As I say, anything that comes in for me to build a school, there'll be a school at the end of the building process, which will be very physically obvious for everybody to see, but equally there will be full accountability for all the materials that were used in that, and full transparency in terms of, you know, the bills of lading and so on and so forth. So if our concern is that there's issues with accountability, then that can be easily addressed. And that's what I want to, if you like, have everybody move on to, which is, let's deal with the legitimate concerns. And there are many of them, because we have many effective solutions to address those. And if we fail, then okay. Then we'll have to stop, we'll have to review, we'll have to reform whatever we're doing, and then we go again. We can't just stand back and say we're not doing anything because we have concerns. And that's exactly what has been happening for far too long. Nothing is happening because there are concerns, even though there are demonstrated and very effective mechanisms to address those concerns. You take the crossing points, okay? They're open at the moment. The only problem is they're only open for a limited catalogue of goods to come in. So when someone says we have a security concern at the crossing point, that's true. There is a security concern at the crossing point. But why can't the crossing points also now be used as a conduit for other supplies? That doesn't alter the security concern. It's just the one bag of cement versus one bag of flour. It's the same process that is getting in a bag of cement and a bag of flour. The security concern has been overcome once you can get the flour in. So now let's use that same solution to bring in the cement. Why not open the crossing points for longer hours? That will increase by a significant percentage the throughput. There are very practical operational solutions that are there, that can be implemented immediately to increase both the throughput and also the nature and variety of supplies coming into Gaza in the present difficult security context. And that is self-evidently obvious to anybody who goes down to the crossing points and looks at how they're operating today. And yet, that's not being addressed. What's being set out there is just a general political statement that we have security issues, therefore we don't do very much, if anything at all.
Now, all of this stuff that's coming into the Gaza Strip is being picked up by your people on the other side. Yeah. So none of it's going to anybody but UNRWA right now.
No, and in fact, in 3 years of Hamas being the government in Gaza, there was only one occasion over a period of a couple of days after the conflict this year, where goods were hijacked and stolen from an UNRWA convoy. And our response to that was very simple. We closed down our entire operation in terms of importation until we had all of those goods returned to us and the assurances that it would never happen again. We are most certainly not going to allow ourselves to be used as a conduit and have the aid that we're bringing in stolen by somebody else. And that was a very effective response, because we got everything back, every blanket, every bag of flour, and the assurances that it wouldn't happen again, and it hasn't happened since. Nothing has been touched or tampered with since then. Now, we will deal with anything out in the future in the same way. And that again is proof positive that we're on top of the situation, we're fully accountable, and it's not, as I say, just to the State of Israel. We're accountable to our donors in the first instance, because they give us a lot of money expecting that that money is going to go with integrity and accountability directly to the beneficiary, to the refugee who needs it. And we take this very, very seriously and have historically done so.
Let me shift focus for a moment now to the Palestinian side of it. Because obviously one of the reasons that this is such a complicated political environment is because of the breakup of the Palestinian government and the existence of a Palestinian Authority in the West Bank and one in the Gaza Strip. You have to deal with both. You're on the ground in the Gaza Strip. You must deal with them both. And every time we hear that there's going to be national reconciliation, all of the national reconciliation agreements that have been leaked to the press all have some form of power sharing, some form of a mechanism of some kind of transitional mechanism to allow the Palestinians to run the West Bank and the Gaza Strip as one entity. The latest national reconciliation talks were supposed to be out this week or on the 25th, and it seems that those are now delayed again, in part because of the PLO's original decision to pull back the Goldstone report from the Human Rights Council. How imperative is it to the work of UNRWA that the Palestinians get their act together? How necessary is it to, how much does it, or are they almost irrelevant to the questions that you have to deal with?
Well, operationally, in terms of running our schools, administering our health clinics, conducting the massive aid operation that we have on the ground, we're independent and autonomous in all operational respects. So the political impasse or breakdown, internal Palestinian breakdown, does not, in terms of our daily operation and the way we conduct our work and what we do and how we do it, has no impact. Of course, at another level, in terms of what it means for the whole peace process, for stability, security, and so on and so forth, it has a profound impact. So the breakdown within the Palestinian political structures and the divisions and the fighting and disagreements is very negative, and again has, of course, then major political and operational consequences, which are not within the particular orbit of UNRWA's operation, but are having influence, such as the decisions to impose a siege on the Gaza Strip, for example. That's directly related to the Palestinian political situation. I argue, of course, that it's not justified because it's not legal, but it's nonetheless a reality, and therefore it has real consequences for the humanitarian situation on the ground. But as so many have done, there are a lot of efforts underway to bring about an end to that division and also to begin a path which is more productive and positive for restoring stability and security, and then a framework upon which to build peace. And we all call for that. I mean, there has to be, in the interests of the ordinary people who are living with the devastating consequences of the political failures on the Palestinian side. We continue to appeal for the political leadership on all sides to put the interests of the people first, above the politics of their own particular factions or parties. Because in all of this, it's the ordinary people who are paying the humanitarian and worse price, the de-development of society, as I said earlier. I mean, the impact on the kids growing up. This is something that will have very long-term consequences, and again, that's something that people need to focus on, particularly the Palestinian leadership, which again is their responsibility.
You have a sense, when we visited UNRWA operations in the Gaza Strip, and Stephanie was taking us around, and we would meet in between going from one place to another. Sometimes we'd meet people on the street, etc. And they would come and they'd want to talk. U.S. Congress people are easily recognizable, and they would rush up and want to talk to them. And at no point, not in a single conversation, did somebody mention Hamas or Fatah. At no point did somebody say, when is Hamas going to save us, or when is Fatah going to save us, or when is... The concentration was on American foreign policy. In your experiences, but we were there for a very brief time, in your experiences, where are the Gazans placing their aspirational hope in? Are they looking for a unity agreement between Fatah and Hamas? Are they imagining a new PLO that will represent them and save them? Are they looking to the international community, or are they looking specifically to the United States?
In the first instance, they're struggling to survive. That's the first preoccupation of everybody in Gaza at the moment, is a struggle just to survive. The good news is that when it comes to the situation at civil society level, there's still a unity there among the majority of the population. So society hasn't broken down and divided, even if at the political level there is a very serious division. So that, of course, is where you know, you and others, and also the appreciation for those congressmen. You know, the Palestinians are very mischaracterized in all of this political rhetoric. For me, the most significant thing that visitors to Gaza experience is not the physical devastation, because you can get a sense of that from the pictures and from the TV and so on and so forth, but it's actually the nature of the people. When you meet the Palestinians, whether it's standing in the rubble of their former lives, or you meet them on the street, in the shops, or the fishermen down at the pier, it's the good nature that strikes everybody who comes to Gaza, that these are decent, civilized people. They're not consumed with hatred. Their circumstance has not changed that nature. You know, the congressmen are very welcome, because they are congressmen from the United States, because people know that they have significant political clout, and because they expect that now that you've seen our plight, you're going to go back and help to rectify it. And again, that's the educated state of the Palestinians in Gaza. They understand how the world works. They're not oversimplifying the situation at all. In fact, they do a very good political analysis, because they actually have to live with it, and they very much appreciate who's helping them, and how difficult and complex it actually is. But for me, that's what we have to protect. You'll also, I'm sure, recount that you don't get anti-Semitic, anti-Israeli rhetoric from those people. Even if it's an Israeli shell that has destroyed their house, they're again not consumed with hatred against the Israelis. They can distinguish between the acts of the Israeli military and their neighbor. And they're not there telling all the visitors when they come what they all negative things about, hatred and so on and so forth. No, there's a conflict. They understand that there's a conflict, and they want an end to this conflict, and they want people to focus on their predicament in the meantime. And that's what they want everybody to focus on, and that lawfully and legally is their entitlement. That we seem not to be able to discharge. That it's not just about those who are doing the fighting, it's about the responsibility of the international community to uphold those fine laws that have been there to guide us as defining civilized action or uncivilized action for so long. And they provide that civilians caught in conflict must be protected. And they set out the standards for that. There are those who argue, by the way, that they're not enough, because those laws of war actually do accommodate the killing of civilians, the destruction of civilian infrastructure under certain circumstances, which is proportional force, appropriate force, reasonable duty of care, and so on and so forth, that those are discharged. The people of Gaza will be satisfied if those laws are upheld as they are currently written. They know that there is a conflict. They know that there is a violent dimension to that conflict. But what they don't accept is that they are again, the ones who are paying the price for this conflict, and in a way that is not giving them the international protections that they're entitled to.
Well, in light of that, how did the people that you work with in Gaza respond to the Goldstone report? Did they see it as an affirmation by the international community that it recognizes the sanctity of all human life, regardless of whether it's Jewish or Palestinian? Did they see it as a positive mechanism that could redress the grievances that they had? Or did they see it as, just another UN resolution that will be...
Well, they were very welcoming of Justice Goldstone, first and foremost for what he is as a human being and where he's coming from. You're talking about a population that is well educated and knows very well who Justice Goldstone is, and respect his credibility very much in terms of the sincerity of his involvement, and that is, again, that is about it in terms of for the ordinary people. They're waiting. They're not hung up on particular processes. They're waiting for accountability and for justice for what has happened to each and every one of them individually as a consequence of this particular conflict. And again, come to Gaza again and listen to what they have to say, because all they're asking for is the rule of law. I mean, that is what they're asking for. They're not asking for vengeance. They're not asking for revenge. They're asking for the rule of law to be upheld. And of course, what they're focused on is whether it is actually upheld or not on processes or individuals or whatever. They are right now, today, the people of Gaza, concerned about the future. They see that their present physical circumstance continues to deteriorate, and they don't understand why the international community, being so well informed about that, is not mobilizing to actually address that. Secondly, when it comes to the future, for them, accountability for what happened in the last round of conflict is a matter of protection going forward. So they want the comfort to know that if there's going to be another round of conflict, that they are safe if they're innocent. And that's what this is about. I mean, if you're an innocent civilian, you should feel safe, even if there is a conflict going on around you, if you take the necessary precaution and so on and so forth, that there are laws that regulate all of this, and that's what it's about. Because if there is no protection accorded by the law, then you're likely to be killed. I mean, that's what it's about. And so many innocent people were killed in the last round of conflict because there wasn't protection.
What's amazing is that you're in one of the worst situations in the world right now. You're in one of the worst places, I guess along with DRC and a few other places. You're in one of the worst places on earth. And you're dealing with an ongoing conflict. And you've managed not only to try to mitigate the worst consequences of the conflict, but you've helped create and break some records that are very positive as well. Now, you just recently got into the Guinness Book of World Records. You helped the Gazans get into the Guinness Book of World Records, not for being the most densely populated spot on Earth, but for having the most children flying kites simultaneously.
Yes.
And I thought, we have a video, actually, that we can't show you right here, but we're putting it, all of this is being broadcast on New America's website, www.newamerica.net. And if you wanted to go back and watch it again, you could. But we're also putting the video that John brought with him of the Gazans and of the children with the kites and the summer games that they had. So I encourage you afterwards to go to our website. This conversation is on the front page, but you can click on the events page and you'll find the Gaza video. But maybe you can tell us a little bit about that.
This, of course, is the key message, which is that all is not lost. There's a phenomenal amount of realistic basis to hope for a better future, and it's in the nature and potential of the population. The Gazans are fantastic human beings. If you go to the schools, overcrowded and all as they are, you'll find a huge amount of positive energy, smiling faces, resilience in the face of, daunting circumstance. But they're always finding a way to move forward. So we had a huge recreation program over the summer months with 252,000 children in our summer games, as we call them, sports, arts and crafts, dancing, theatre. I mean, the full range of activities. And part of that was that the kids made kites. So we looked up the Guinness Book of Records, and we found that the record was set in Germany for the most kites flown simultaneously in a single location, and it was 967. So the children of Gaza said, we can break that record. And
that's one of your classrooms.
Exactly. So we facilitated their transport to a beach location, and 3,710 kites were flown. And the Guinness Book of Records verified the record, which in terms of just a statement of potential. I mean, as I keep saying, these are not second-class citizens or third-class citizens in terms of their abilities or their standards or their aspirations. They're first-class in every respect, and all they need is an opportunity. And they don't even need support. You just create the opportunity, give them the space, and with so many tragedies and travesties around the world, drawing on limited financial resources, you rightly said at the outset that this is a man-made crisis. The people who are queuing, 850,000 refugees queuing for food at our centres, they are well equipped, both in terms of their qualifications and also their determination to fend for themselves. The reason that they cannot fend for themselves is because we haven't overcome the legitimate security challenges that do face us for access. And we're not doing that. So again, this is what we need to focus on, that all is most definitely not lost in the Gaza Strip. There is a massive potential there, positive potential, not just for themselves, but also that will go beyond the borders of Gaza and contribute positively in the region and worldwide. And the kids there now are planning what they can do in terms of other records, world records that they can break, even if they're in these circumstances that they find themselves in. They haven't given up, and therefore we shouldn't give up on them.
That actually, I don't even want to ask you another question, because that's such a perfect place to such a perfect place to end it. Do you have a sense, if President Obama, if you had a message to give to President Obama in terms of what needs to be done right now?
Well, we are, I have to be very clear, we are very encouraged, all of us who live in the Gaza Strip, by what President Obama has done, also by the people that he has appointed to come to contribute to solving the problems that we have there. In particular, of course, Senator Mitchell, who I know from my own country in Ireland, what we need to always say to him, and it's a big word of thanks for the contribution that he made to solving the problems of Northern Ireland. And there are many others, who are engaged that give us a cause for hope. So let's not mix up, representing the scale and urgency of the situation is not a criticism of those who are very actively engaged. But, of course, what we have to keep doing is we have to keep emphasizing the time dimension to this thing. We're running out of time at an alarming rate. And the situation is evolving negatively on the ground. And the grassroots, is where peace will either be established or fail. And we have the prospects at grassroots level in the Gaza Strip for very solid foundations for peace, because the population there have the mindset, attitude and orientation that is needed for contributing positively to a peace process through their own contribution, i.e. responsible behaviour, responsible attitude, an intelligent approach to the issues and all that's involved in that. That's what we have. That's what we need to protect. But unfortunately, the conditions that are being created by the consequences of political failure, like the siege on Gaza and so on and so forth, these are negatively affecting what we already had, and it's very damaging. Many people have said it's a society being destroyed, and I have to say that I would agree with that. It's not. It's not alarmist to say that, as society is being destroyed, not just physically, but also in terms of its values and its outlook and its standards and so on and so forth by the circumstances.
Well, I certainly hope that that message on your trip here breaks in through the wall of conventional wisdom that exists in Congress and elsewhere. Let's take some questions from the audience. And I'm going to ask you to applaud him again after we're done. John, we'll start right here.
I'm Tom Gutman, a former executive of an NGO in the Middle East, and I want to say thanks, John, very much for what you've done for the NGOs as well as the Red Cross and in your work with the UN. There was a general here a month ago who said that Hamas was using UNRWA and that UNRWA was really a cover for Hamas, and many of the employees were Hamas people. And when Tom New and I were working in the Middle East, we talked to those generals, and they said they hated the UN. And so how do we get beyond that perception? If there was one tool that we could carry away, and each of us talked to 2 congresspersons to correct that misperception, I would say even a lie, is there something you can suggest we would use to carry away, as well as a video of this conference today?
Sure. You know, it's easy to make an unsubstantiated or false allegation. It's more difficult to prove innocence. But we are, at UNRWA, we are perfectly prepared to address any concerns that anybody has, because it is very important. It's not enough for us just to dismiss allegations. What we have to do is we have to listen carefully to those, and what we encourage people to do is to provide the basis for those allegations to us, publicly or otherwise. We don't mind. You know, this is everybody's entitlement, and we should make decisions though on the basis of fact, not on the basis of allegation. So we hear a lot of allegations, but we don't get any substantiation of those. And if there are things offered, we find it very easy to refute that, to counter that with physical evidence. And my message to everybody is, it's okay to be skeptical if you wish to be, but please give us the opportunity to respond. And if we do respond effectively, then we expect you to move forward, respecting us. You may not like us or love us or whatever. Keep your emotions to yourself. But the fact of the matter is that over the past period of time, we've been very pleased, and will always continue to be, to answer any criticism that anybody might have. We are independent of all political structures. The Hamas de facto government has been respectful of that independence, and on the occasion that they were not, we dealt with it very publicly for all to see. And you know, there's a lot of information out there. You know, there are drones up in the sky taking pictures. There's plenty of mechanisms to find information to substantiate or refute concerns, and we'll always be very happy to do that, because again, we understand where the skepticism is coming from. We won't challenge the intent or attitude behind it. We'll simply focus on the substance of the allegation, and we'll be pleased to address it.
Back there. John, right there in the third row.
Thank you. I'm Michael Thomas, and John, we talked to you. A small group of us were going through the area and had an opportunity to talk to you in May, and I want to thank you again for everything we learned from you and from Stephanie, and got to observe there. One of the things you talked about to us then, and we observed on the ground, was the disconnect between the legitimate security concerns of the Israelis and the methods that they have chosen to respond with. Could you speak a little bit to who is empowered and who is hurt within the Gazan economy and society by the siege?
Sure. Well, the first people that are hurt by the siege are those who lost their jobs. So I mentioned that 100,000 who had the dignity of work are out of work now, and they have to rely on handouts of food or other assistance just to struggle and survive. And it's everybody else after that. You know, the quality of the water, the problems with the sewerage, the shortages of all things that you need to conduct your life affects everybody. Everybody. When the power goes, that's, you know, that doesn't discriminate between one political person or another. It's everybody. So the whole society there is affected. The business sector, who were traditionally very strong allies of their counterparts on the Israeli side, the businessmen in Gaza, they were in very productive relationship with their Israeli counterparts. Their connection has been completely severed. And they feel very aggrieved by that, because again, this was a part of society that was very much working with their neighbour, very committed to that relationship, and again, that's a foundation upon which you can build a lot. Just as those who used to go out of Gaza every day, up to 100,000 people, used to go into the state of Israel to work. Again, they were having human-to-human contact, as well as having a positive experience from that in terms of having a living and a means to support themselves and their families. Again, that human-to-human contact, that productive relationship that was mutually productive for both sides, that's been severed. Again, these are the things that are the foundations upon which you can build, and we had it, and now we've lost it. It's being replaced now by another situation, which is of course, as I say, disconnected from their neighbor.
Another argument that's actually been made by the West Bank government has been that Hamas obviously imports goods from Egypt through the tunnel system and collects a tax on the goods that are brought in. And so Hamas is able to actually create an informal economy in which it collects revenue. That revenue normally would accrue to the Palestinian government and the West Bank if the borders were open to normal trade of goods. And so the siege, in a very direct way, also as vis-a-vis the government that exists in Ramallah, is disenfranchising and disempowering them. So that's another either potential side effect or consequence of the siege. John, I'm going to ask you to go all the way to the back so we can the gentleman in the middle, and then the person all the way in the back. Yes, sir, you, the one who, that's right.
I've got a big enough mouth, you could probably hear me anyway. I had read that you talked about UNRWA wanting to control what is taught in the schools and have the final say. I've read, and I want to ask for your clarification, that Hamas had tried to stop you from teaching about the Holocaust in your schools, and could you talk about how that back and forth happened and what the resolution was?
Yeah, it wasn't the government of Gaza. It was some political figures were outspokenly critical of our human rights program, and they expressed their position, but in the end, UNRWA is, as I said before, autonomous in its own decision making. So we will decide on what we do and how we do it and when we do it. And that's just the nature of the environment that we operate in. There's lots of controversy and controversial statements made, but we remain very focused on what we're doing and our responsibility to do what is right.
John, right there, Nick. Yes.
Oh, thank you very much. My name is Albert Nikemgen. I wonder if you could comment on this fact. Based on what you've said and what I've read, during the period that UNRWA has been active in Gaza, the population has about doubled. So I wonder, over these last decades, has UNRWA also been responsible for distributing birth control and family planning materials?
Sure. As you know, we have a global population that is increasing everywhere, and no less so in the Gaza Strip. We have a very important component of our health program, which is a family planning program, and we focus very much on that. But nonetheless, the reality is that mothers and fathers in Gaza are continuing to decide to have more children, and so yes, the population of the Gaza Strip continues to grow.
The young woman here in the middle, John, up here.
Hi, Diana Greenwald with the Middle East Youth Initiative at Brookings. Thanks for coming, John. You spoke earlier about the very high level of educational attainment among young people, thanks in no small part to UNRWA's work. And you spoke about the past relationships between Palestinian labor and Israeli labor markets. So I'm just wondering, in the long term, assuming the siege is lifted, where do you see opportunities opening up for this highly educated and skilled workforce?
Well, this is a very, very important question, because that's what should be getting much more attention. We've diverted so much of our energy and effort into the political difficulties that we're not putting enough attention into the human development aspects, which, with a population that is increasing, as one of the earlier questioners highlighted, we have to be planning for a future. So where are we orientating the education system, for example? Is it into the service sector? Are we preparing people to be going abroad for employment, or are we talking about what type of industry are we talking about in terms of the future for the population if they stay in Gaza, and so on and so forth. So I am very concerned about that. I don't have a quick answer to your question because there is no answer to it at the moment, simply because there isn't enough time, effort and energy being invested by experts in looking at this issue and realizing that tens of thousands of students are qualifying every year out of the universities in Gaza. Where are they going? Have we looked at the courses from the point of view of the global economy? What is realistic in terms of if we do get the blockade lifted and we get back to a productive peace process and so on and so forth, and life begins to be restored to normality? Okay, well then, in the context of the real world and the levels of unemployment that are existing elsewhere, what is realistically feasible for the students and young people of Gaza in terms of prospects for employment and so on? I believe very strongly that we should be putting a lot more time and effort into that, because they're going through their education system now, and we shouldn't be looking at re-education into the future. We should be planning for that better future now. So thank you for raising that point.
John, here in the second row.
Thanks. My name is Lee Diamond. Mr. Ging, thanks so much for that excellent presentation, and thanks for your service. I think some of these things that you discussed we could break out into specific problems. So I'm just curious to focus on one. Is the high school graduating students? Has there been, or thought, and I'm just going to follow through on a thought process, not to suggest that you should have done these things, but has there been an effort like to provide the government of Israel with the transcripts of these students, and then, for example, to contact universities where they may have been accepted and ask for their assistance, to ask international or American university associations for assistance? Because one of the problems is, I think, that we need to raise the visibility of these difficulties, and which I'm certainly very struck by your presentation. I've heard much of it before, but I think that we could, make a difference, and of course also by reaching our Congress people more specifically. But just on that one train of thought.
Yes, there's more that we can do, all of us, but the first thing that we need to do is to mobilize a realization of the urgency and the need itself, and then we can mobilize around the suggestions and ideas. You might recall that last year there was quite a controversy about Fulbright scholars who were initially told that they couldn't leave the Gaza Strip, and then the Secretary of State got involved and said, no, we need to get them out. And then there was a whole process. These issues are going up to that level to get a couple of students out. Well, what about all the other students? So they were the Fulbright scholars, but then we have so many others, including those who didn't win scholarships but who are prepared to pay the fees. There are a lot of similar students in Gaza as well who don't want any charity from anybody. Their parents are well capable of supporting them, but they're also trapped. So thank you for again realizing that we can do more. And there's not just one thing that needs to be done. It's actually, if we can mobilize as many, and you highlighted universities getting involved to say, okay, I have this, instead of sending a letter to the student in Gaza saying, okay, here's your deadline. If you don't turn up by such and such a day, we're really, really sorry, but we have to give your place to the next student. That university writing to somebody who could actually help to get this student out would be very, very helpful for that student, because that student receiving that letter is devastating, because what can they do? So again, you're right. All of us everywhere can probably do a little more, and if we put all of that together, it'll amount to a lot more. And I don't believe that there's any intention on the part of anybody in any political structure anywhere who wants to kill off the prospects of a better educated population living in the Gaza Strip, who share the universal values that we all aspire for everybody to share, and so on and so forth. So I think once we provide concrete solutions and suggestions that we will get there. But at the moment we just don't have enough mobilized energy behind the whole thing, and again that's devastating for the kids.
I'm sorry, I'm going to take just one more question from Michael, but I would ask that anybody who has questions maybe to come to Tom and John maybe afterwards, and I'm sure that they can get those messages and those questions maybe to Stephanie and John, and they can try to get back to you.
Michael Lame, Rethink the Middle East. One very brief comment and then a question. The comment is you talked about you didn't want these issues politicized, and I think that's an impossibility. That with the very best of humanitarian intentions, there are political ramifications of the work of UNRWA. And I think if and when there is a Palestinian state, and there's a history book written of it, there should be a chapter devoted to UNRWA and its contribution to the development of that. The question is, if and when Gaza is reopened and you do get the construction and building materials in, what would you construct? I mean, on the one hand, it's obvious to me that people living in tents or without houses should have houses again. On the other hand, it's a little odd or bizarre to me to think that we would build new refugee temporary housing that would last another year of impermanent existence. So are there any constraints or conditions about what kind of housing could it be as good that it would be considered permanent after a peace treaty, or is it a kind of is there any kind of refugee housing that it can't be so good? Are there any limitations on the housing, given that it's not part of a final resolution of the conflict?
Sure. The very first thing that I would focus on is schools. I need many more school buildings. And then I will then focus very much on the water and sanitation crisis that we have in terms of that infrastructure. Of course, the repairs to the damaged housing is also a big priority to relieve the suffering of the people. The buildings that we build for the refugees are made of cement and steel. So it's not that we're putting them into, prefabricated buildings or something that has a shelf life of a year or 2 years, that then we have to come again and so on and so forth. Again, we're not preempting the outcome of the peace process, but what we are doing is we're working to give people a dignified existence in the meantime, and in the meantime has been 60 years. So again, we have to take into account what we do and how we do it, and what the long-term consequences are, not just for the individuals who you're providing a house for, but also ecologically, the water and sanitation system and so on and so forth, the sustainability down the line, because none of us know when we're going to have a solution to this conflict, and therefore we must plan with a long view in terms of the repercussions and consequences of everything that we might do. But it's all about the development of a population. That's in the very first instance our preoccupation. And yes, there will be some pages written, I'm sure, about UNRWA. And for me, the biggest badge of honor for UNRWA will be what I mentioned already, which is that we focused on education all the time. And we started out with boys and girls on an equal footing, and the work that we do on our women's initiatives. We have a massive program in Gaza at the moment called Equality in Action. So that's the program that is bringing gender equality into action at the grassroots level, and we're extremely proud of that at this particular time in the Gaza Strip. And again, for those that come, we're always very happy that they visit that program and see again how contradictory the reality is at the grassroots level to the, if you like, the characterization that is often out there about the type of society that exists and so on and so forth. All those are valid points, and for sure what we will stay focused on is human development.
Well, thank you, John. And I'm sorry to have kept you all 5 minutes over, but I have a feeling that there's a Nobel Prize somewhere in the future for UNRWA. But thank you all for coming, and we look forward to seeing you next time.